Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, our viewers. This is Daybreak on Trust TV, your favorite morning show, and it is Monday, another week, the beginning of another week, and of course, the last day of the month of October 2022. I am Abdulaziz, coming to you from the studios of Trust TV in the capital, Abuja.
Good morning, and indeed, thank you so much for joining us. You're welcome to your favorite, morning show. I'm Dashin Husseina Osman, and it feels good to be here. Another week, another start, another day for us, to take on, whatever comes our way.
Exactly, and as I said, this is the last day of the month of October. How time flies.
I think October has to be one of the fastest months this year. Like, it just came and left.
Because actually, I remember on this show when I was saying we were ending September, so this is already end of October.
And the year is fast, running out. Just 2 months left, and we get. I think next year comes with a lot of expectations from the general elections.
Census, there will be census.
New Year's and all that. So a lot to look forward to.
Yesterday, I was saying that for everybody who has a New Year resolutions or things he wants to do in 2022.
When was the last time?
It's 2 months to the end of 2022.
So start thinking about it. When was the last time you had a New Year's resolution? Because I don't think people adopt that anymore.
Yeah. Well, some still do, and of course, maybe not really in terms of New Year's resolution, but so many things like maybe I want to get married in 2022 or get a new car, and then of course this is the end of 2022. Well, of course we thank God that we are still in one piece and healthy and all that. So I think it's a beautiful way to end the month and end of the rainy season also, I think.
Yes.
Let's have a look at the major news headlines this morning. CBN has my backing to change Naira notes, says President Buhari.
Terror threat. British Airways resumes London-Abuja flight.
Transition or Etola behaving like Trump, says Adeleke.
Now we'll move on to the details of the stories. United Kingdom carrier British Airways has resumed its London-Abuja flight BA83 after cancelling the flight for 2 days. The BA83 flight from London Heathrow to Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja, was suddenly diverted to Lagos on Thursday. The development caused outcries among the affected passengers who complained that there was no adequate notice. Though British Airways did not provide any reason for the decision, the diversion of the flight might not be unconnected with the terror alert in Abuja, with several foreign missions, including the US, UK, Australia, Germany, among others, issuing travel warnings to their citizens. The Lagos-Abuja flight will now depart by 8-10 hours and arrive 15-15 hours instead of the previous 22-25 hours and 4-40 hours.
Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari Sunday said the decision of the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, to launch new designs and replace high-value Naira notes had his support. The CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele had, during a special briefing in Abuja on Wednesday, disclosed that the Apex Bank would, following approval by the President, start circulating new redesigned 100 Naira, 200 Naira, 500 Naira, and 1,000 Naira notes from December 15. But Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, had on Friday, during a 2023 budget defense session with the Senate Committee on Finance, countered Emefiele on the proposal, said the ministry was not consulted by CBN on the planned Naira redesigning and that she could not comment on it as regards its merits or otherwise. But yesterday, Buhari, according to a statement by his senior special assistant on media and publicity, Garba Shehu, emphasized that he supports the CBN's decision to redesign the Naira notes. The president said he was convinced that the nation would gain a lot by doing so. Buhari was quoted to have stated this in a Hausa radio interview with a veteran journalist, Halilu Ahmed Gezo and Kamaluddin Sani Shawai for Tambari TV. The president said reason given to him by the CBN convinced him that the economy stood to benefit from the reduction in inflation, currency counterfeiting, and excess cash in circulation.
All right, moving on to more stories. Osun State Governor-elect Ademola Adeleke on Sunday said the outgoing governor of the state, Boyega Oyetola, is behaving like former President Donald Trump of the United States, whom he described as a bad loser. He was reacting to a statement credited to Kola Olabisi, the spokesman of Osun State Chairman of the APC. Boyega Famodun, questioning the chairman of Ademola Adeleke Transition Committee, Muyiwa Oladimeji, about the rights he had in asking Oyetola to prepare his handing over note when the matter is still in court. According to him, he is still wondering why Oyetola is not cooperating with the transition committee in the state in order to allow smooth transition in line with laws of the land and democratic tenets. And with that, we have...
Okay, yeah, we've come to the end of this thing, but before we go into
yeah.
more packages, you know, this is election season and politicians are making a lot of promises. And before we go to more packages, let's look at this video. That's quite interesting, don't you see? So he promised them the bridge, and then the next election season, maybe he forgot that he made the promise.
It's actually a sad reality. A lot of, these politicians come out with, manifestos with a lot of lists of what they're going to achieve.
Lofty promises.
I'm telling you, once, they're elected, nothing happens. They just forget the masses.
They forget it. They forget it. And I think, I don't know, that this serves him right. You know, they say, okay, so follow the bridge.
The bridge that you built.
Build the bridge.
Quite funny as well.
That's quite interesting. So let's move on to more packages. Blacksmithing is an ancient practice of forging forging iron and metals into objects and tools for human use. The noble craft has played significant role for farmers, especially this artwork is still a source of livelihood for many in Maiduguri, but has some sets of challenges. Our correspondent Bitros Kurusi has this report.
Blacksmithing in Nigeria is an age-long occupation. It is found across all tribes, and the skill is transferred from generation to generation. Gamburu Market is one of Maiduguri's oldest trade center. It's also a home for blacksmiths' old technology that produces farm implements, bush traps, knives, axe, pots, and many more. All these are crafted from iron, silver, and gold. Baba Gana Usman inherited the metalwork from his father, and he has been in the business for 35 years. He says the craft brings customers from here and neighboring countries. It's a trade that has not changed and still fetches proceeds for him. My father taught all of us blacksmith work right from childhood. I have 3 apprentices under me. People come from Chad, Niger, and Cameroon to buy what we make. We even forge car parts. I make like 5,000 naira daily. The business has helped me and my family a lot. I provide for them and sponsor my children's education. We get our raw materials from scrap dealers who sell old items like cars, something that's not useful anymore. We make more profits during the rainy season because it's the farming period. The only support we want is to empower the youth we have trained. Meanwhile, the goldsmith business is facing some challenges of working tools, machines, and mostly sourcing raw gold. The goldsmith dealers blame the poor patronage to border closure and insurgency. They only redesign, repair, and clean jewelries for customers. We get the gold from Saudi Arabia and Dubai. Most people here prefer those ones. We don't have the equipment that forge raw gold. We only fix earrings and necklaces that are old, and we also redesign and wash when it's faded. If we could be provided with all these things, the government will be shocked with what we can do, knowing that gold is where the money lies. Back then, when the town was safe, we get karat gold in kilos, but with the insurgency, it scared traders. So we only do some touches on the gold women bring to us. But now that peace has returned, we are hoping with support, the business will start fully. And also we call on the government to open the borders to boost the business. Despite the challenges of the old metalwork and industrialized methods of forging tools, blacksmithing will always be a craft that will never fade.
Well, while some people seem to believe that this particular craft is, slowly fading, dying fast due to technology, some still believe that it is not dying at all. Because, the good thing about this kind of craft is, it's passed from generation to generation.
Exactly. It's become a family tradition.
Exactly.
It is in the family.
And then there's a way to infuse technology to make it a lot better. Then, it's a way to
well,
go.
some of them try to innovate, like with the blacksmiths, like also pottery makers, potters. They also try to maybe do some modern things that people need.
Pottery, yeah.
Exactly, just to like modernize, bring the functionality of some things instead of just the old pots that we know. These days you see they do some beautiful flower pots, there are things and ceramics and all that. So I think things like this may, of course, may not be really in vogue now, but it will take a long time for it to die, I think. Well, what do you think?
I don't think it's going to die anytime soon, because it's been around for ages, and it will continue.
And there is patronage.
Exactly, and some crafts will not just die. It won't die, no matter how modernized the world becomes. All right, so let's move on to more packages. The importance of formal education has been, especially for the girl child, has again been emphasized. In Makurdi, some teenage girls begged the federal government to do more to educate girls. The report.
The girls aged between 13 and 16 said formal education can help the society stand better. They spoke on some of the benefits, encouraging the government to improve the sector.
Education helps in the rapid development of a society and a nation as whole. In that same vein, helps give good grooming habits to citizens who tend to be nation builders of tomorrow. More so, education saved lives in the community through doctors, as they are also educated to treat.
Enables children think effectively on what to do, when to do, and how to do as leaders of tomorrow. Just as the saying goes, education is the key to success. Furthermore, education provides individuals with the necessary knowledge to achieve his or her desire in life.
Where there is high illiteracy, there will be low development, because there will be not know how to produce or even manage their resources. But with literacy, there will be development, because learned people will know how to produce and manage the resources to benefit the people.
The teenagers are, however, worried about the girl child education. They complain that poverty, culture, and greed, as well as ignorance, are standing in the way of the girl child education.
Government should also create a platform that will enlighten parents on the benefits of a girl child education. In addition, women should be given equal treatment in the government sectors concerning politics and leadership. I believe that if the aforelisted procedures are duly observed, the girl child education would be encouraged and not discouraged.
Governments should create public awareness, especially in rural areas where most people do not understand the importance of girl child education. Scholarships should be given to children who whose parents could not afford to pay their school fees.
I think that the government should provide free education, most especially in the rural areas, where most parents do not see the need of training girl child and regard them as people who will waste their money and end up in another man's house, and parents giving their daughters out for early marriage just to get money for their uses. With the help of government in providing free education, I think it will encourage parents and even the girl child for the need of going to school and how important it is.
Awareness creation for the girl child education has come to the fore in recent times. But these teenage girls are convinced that most of the rural dwellers have refused to adapt. To some, they say poverty is a cause and urge the federal government to do more for the girls in Nigeria. This is a call of organizations like the United Nations in the vanguard against gender discrimination.
Rented crowds at political rallies is a common phenomenon during electioneering season like we are today in Nigeria. People are often induced with gifts and all kinds of monetary promises to form a large crowd at political campaign venues. In this report, Bello Musa speaks to analysts who opine that political crowd renting only promotes thuggery and hinders democratic growth. The reports.
Rented crowd is when one hired people to form large crowd at the political rally, protest, or other public events. Individuals are often attracted to attend political rally by inducing them with money or other gift to create a large crowd for a particular candidate or political party. Many, however, believe rented crowd is a deceit and setback to the growth of democracy.
So usually such crowds, to me, to my own understandings, is deceit. They rented the crowd to deceive the people. Yes. You find out, especially if people are disenchanted. They would not like to come to that political event. So what will they do? Is to sponsor people to come. And at the end of the day, you see them giving people 1,000 naira, 500 naira.
Some believe that unless leadership recruitment process is addressed, Nigerians will continue to witness renting of crowd, vote buying, and other irregularities in the electoral process.
So we should have a leader that is bold enough to stand up. That's why I said earlier on, to unite the people, we have to address the leadership question in Nigeria. Unless we address it now, it will boomerang in the near future. Because the army of unemployed youths I'm seeing around is disturbing. We have almost a near collapse system. If you look at our education, if you look at about health.
In Electoral Act 2022 as amended, it comes with a lot of provisions. And those provisions that the Electoral Act come with provide for certain level of punishment for people who, most especially thuggery, vote buying, renting crowd to be part of political activities. I think the Electoral Act has taken care of that. What needed to be done is for the government to follow it up to implement those Electoral Act. I think the police, or rather the security agencies, should be able to work assiduously in ensuring that they carry out the responsibility as assigned to them by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
As campaigns gather momentum, some unemployed may be bracing up for opportunity to be paid at political rallies, though voters are admonished not to allow money to influence their choice of political leaders in 2023. Bello Musa, Trust TV News, Kaduna.
Okay, when you talk about rented crowds, what are the challenges that actually come with rented crowds?
Challenges.
Yes, so many challenges.
No, of course. I mean, yeah.
One, the aim, of course, if you could actually rent a crowd, is to be deceptive, which means all the manifesto, everything you've promised.
Now, packaging.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you get? And then the thoughts that these crowds, some of them, how much do they even get paid?
Yeah.
Sometimes 1,000, 2,000 for what?
Exactly. And also, people believe that the crowd does not usually translate into voting. But they
It
still hire
doesn't.
the crowd
Exactly,
and
to
maybe
actually
to the
vote.
correct.
And then during political rallies like that, when violence erupts, the casualty tends to be much because of
it's
these crowds.
high.
You don't know who
Okay.
is who.
Exactly.
You don't know who is
Exactly.
carrying weapons.
And actually, as the analysts say in this report, you find out that it promotes serious issues of drug abuse and thuggery. Most of these guys, are a lot of them irresponsible people, and they wouldn't mind doing anything. There are reports that sometimes at the end of such rallies, they just go on rampage, stealing from people or robbing people of their phones on the streets and all that.
Of course.
I think it's one phenomenon that maybe we have to also regulate.
How would you regulate?
No, for example, if INEC bans such kind of things.
Oh, like the rallies?
Yes.
So what will happen?
So I
It's
don't
going
know.
to be televised.
It will change.
It will be televised in a
It will change our
conference
political
room.
landscape, but at least if to say maybe only town halls and not so many people, this and that, it will reduce this because the rascality is just too much.
True that. All right, so we'll take a quick breather, and when we return, we'll move on to more on Daybreak. Do stay with us.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
All right, welcome back and thanks for staying with us. If you're just joining us, you're watching Daybreak on Trust TV. And right about now, it's time for the newspaper review. And as usual, we're going to begin by taking a look at the front page of, the major dailies in Nigeria. We'll start with Daily Trust, the newspaper. And the lead story here talks about CBN has many backing for redesigning Naira notes, says Buhari. And writers that says currency will benefit from initiative. People with illicit money buried under the soil will have a challenge. And president's comments puts Emefiele finance minister rift to rest. You can find details of that story on page 4. And, if you take a look at just below that particular story, the pictorial there, a sight for sore eyes, is the Nigerian under-17 girls team, the Flamingos, celebrating their FIFA World Cup bronze medals on Sunday after a 3-2 penalty shootout win over Germany in Mumbai, India. That leads us to the story that says Nigeria's Flamingos edge Germany for first ever World Cup medal. Details on page 39. Ganduje launches mass transit scheme with 100 buses, 50 taxis. They also have Abuja Rail to resume operations soon as minister meets contractor. At the top of the page there, Afenifere leaders, Makinde, others endorse Tinubu. You also have oil firms pay 138 billion naira petroleum tax. You can find details of that story on page 23. And we also have on terror alert, Buhari holds emergency security meeting today. These are some of the stories on Daily Trust, a newspaper.
Yeah, so like up next, let's look at the Punch newspaper, where the lead story this morning says CBN destroys over 6 trillion banknotes under Buhari. The story is on page 26, and it has riders. Apex Bank spends 3.88 billion to dispose multilated banknotes in 5 years. Naira slumps to 785 per dollar as reserves dip, local currency faces more pressure. President defends Emefiele as criticism mounts against Naira redesign. And just below that, the pictorials go with the story talking about Lagos-Ibadan traffic, motorists, motorists on one-way compound gridlock. And there are pictures to show for it. And oil earnings crash by 288 billion in Q3, says the federal government. And details of that story is on page 23. Next to that, Borno housewife poisons chief imam, says, I hate marriage. Story on page 4 and 6. Page 4 and 5. Then Senate probes AGF Malami's ministry over 2.2 billion expenditure. The story, details of that story is on page 10. And then on the top of the page, Lagos-Ibadan Expressway students fundraise, ransom kidnapped mates released. Buhari meets security chiefs, postpones events, soldiers kill terrorists in Kaduna. Terror bombings, Somalia to fly critically injured victims abroad. Death toll now 104. Countries condemn attacks, Buhari pop, others mourn 161 Seoul stampede victims. And then by the masthead, Afenifere Adebanjo insists on Obi as Fashoranti backs Tinubu. Story on page 14. These are details of the stories on the front page of this Punch newspaper this morning.
All right, we'll move on to this day newspaper, and the lead story talks about the redesigning of the Naira notes, and a writer that says Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Finance is on board or on the board of CBN to ensure effective coordination. Now, at the top of the page, there you have Obagbena calls for collective action to salvage education sector. Honored as GCU Mariner of the Century, Omoto says there is growing distrust in value of academic certificates. We also have more stories that says Fashola, federal government yet to determine extent of damage on roads infrastructure by raging floods. Just below the nameplates there, Atiku mocks APC, says ruling party can't campaign on issues. We also have Tinubu saying Buhari declined to nominate my running mate, and Afenifere divided as Fashoranti. Others endorse ex-Lagos Governor Adebanjo, insist on Obi. All right, just below the page, the lead story there we have Huriwa urges EFCC to probe Adamu over 20 billion naira party's funds. And these are some of the stories that made it to the front page of this day newspaper.
Okay, the next newspaper on our line of this morning is Leadership newspaper, where the lead story says PMB shocks finance minister, backs Emefiele on Naira redesign. And the story is on the front page, and it continues on page 8. And then, of course, the paper has a front page comment that is like editorial on its front page this morning, which says security alerts by the U.S. Embassy. Who gains? And that's a big question, and that's what constitutes what constitutes the most part of the front page of Leadership this morning. But then at the top of the page up there are some other stories. 2023, Afenifere backtracks, endorses Tinubu, story on page 4. 60 killed in Indian bridge collapse, story on page 22. Then Oshibanjo, as Colombia president, AFDB leads new job creation effort. So these are the packages from leadership newspapers this morning.
All right, up next is Nigerian Tribune. And from the top of the page there, Wike dares IU over autumn. Others vows to expose more dirty deals. To travel to Turkey to fine-tune strategies. Now we have Southeast governors meet in Enugu, decry rising insecurity in the zone, and the rider that says roll out joint security patrol of highways by December. Now the lead stories on a terror alert. Operation Stop and Search begins at NAS. Buhari summoned security meeting, and some riders that say senator reps to use presidential gate. FCTA bars vigilantes from using firearms. Air Max 500 million naira for community policing. We have more stories there. Atiku's foreign engagements yet to yield massive investments, jobs, says campaign organization. Military repels attack on army barracks, kills 8 suspected Boko Haram members in Niger State. Details of that can be found on page 4. NDLEA arrests village head, 10 others, over 991,320 opioid pills, 1,251 kilograms of skunk. All right, moving on. Tinubu visits Fashoranti Yoruba leaders in Akure, and there you can see a pictorial of Chief Ruben Fashoranti praying for the presidential candidates of the APC, Senator Bola Tinubu, during the visits, in Akure. And the writer that says presents to them policy documents, action plan for better Nigeria. Those present at the Akure blessing are majorly those who have distant ties with Afenifere, says Akin Onigbinde. And we also have on the footnote there, CBN has my backing on Naira redesign, says Buhari. And these are some of the stories on the Nigerian Tribune.
Okay, the last paper we'll be looking at this morning is the Guardian newspaper, where the lead story is talking about, 2023 economy in dire straits. OPS tells candidates go beyond rhetoric. And, OPS stands for Organized Private Sector. Then it has 2 riders. Doubts persist over immediate subsidy removal by next government. Tinubu, Atiku, Obi are pro-market reformers, good for economy, says Uzum. And then at the top of the page, Afenifere divided on Tinubu, Obi as Fashoranti host APC candidate. Story on page 6. And next to that, Buhari backs CBN governor on Naira redesign, meet service chiefs to review security. And the details of that story is on page 2. And then below the page, Falana demands information over 17 billion naira petrol tracking technology contract. Story on page 3. Then aviation workers issue MMA to 7-day picket notice over mass sack. And AFDB plan $1 billion innovation on climate change solution. Story on page 2. Lastly, terror alerts youth leaders allege plot to kill Kanu. Story on page 6. So these are details of the stories on the front page of Guardian newspaper this morning. And with this, we take a quick breather. When we come back, our guest analyst, Mukhtar Suleiman, will be joining us to shed some light on some of these stories. Do stay with us.
Nigerians, elections are here again. Let us shun violence. Let us play the game according to the rules. Do not be a thug. Say no to violence. Let's rise and defeat violence, crime, and sabotage against the peace of our nation. Nigeria is the only country we have. We must do everything to keep it united. We must avoid any act that promotes hate and disintegration. Say no to separatist movement, terrorism, fake news, hate speech, religious bigotry, and any act that tends to divide us as a nation. Watch out for strange gatherings and suspicious movements. Restrict access to sensitive documents and data, the disclosure of which may damage national security. Educate your staff and family, particularly on measures to safeguard information and report security breaches. Apply relevant legal security guidelines to protect yourself and your neighbors neighbors. Due to misinformation and wrong choices, some idle persons resort to vices in their greed to get rich quick. They resort to kidnapping, killings for rituals, and other heinous crimes. Avoid wrong use of the social media. Before you broadcast that false message, think twice. Ask whether it will promote peace or violence. For safety at home, still be security conscious. Educate your household on safety tips. Report all suspicious movements and persons to the security agencies nearest to you. Be a good citizen. Be patriotic. To pass security information, please call 0813-222-2105, 0915-339-1309, 0908-837-3514, or send a mail to dsspr@dss.gov.ng. This message is from the Department of State Services, DSS.
But in a situation where you find that not necessarily tribal or regional.
All right, welcome back and thanks for staying with us. It's still daybreak on Trust TV live in the Federal Capital Territory, and the newspaper review continues. We have our guest in the studio, Mukhtar Suleiman. He's a public affairs analyst. Good morning and thank you so much for joining us again.
Good morning. It's been a long time, actually.
Good morning. It's
been like a month. I saw Abdulaziz, because I think the last 2 times we did together, he traveled.
Exactly.
And then 2 Mondays, I was out of town.
Exactly. So it's good to be here and good to be back. And I was saying that we are just 2 months away from the from the year, the next year. And then of course the elections are coming, anxiety and everything. How do you see the anxiety into the election year, especially in the light of all these terror attacks, this and that?
You remember just before the campaign started, we had this conversation where I said I look forward to drama.
Exactly.
If anything, I think I've gotten more than my money's worth. I'm glad I was here for it.
So you're enjoying the show.
Yeah, so far the show has been really, really catchy and fun and all of that. So, but we are hoping that things will die down. In light, like you just rightly stated, in light of the whole security threat thing, it's so difficult for any one of us currently to pinpoint exactly what the issues are around the security currently, because we don't understand where it's coming from the side of the U.S. Embassy. They're not telling us everything. We also don't know how it's been handled or managed from the side of the government.
Okay, we have we have the president holding an emergency security meeting. Meanwhile, we're being told to, go on our daily activities and not be afraid of anything. So doesn't that?
Yeah, I think the bulk of that is just management. They're trying to manage mass hysteria. So while he's holding the security meetings, because like yesterday, I was saying on my WhatsApp status, and I was like, as much as we don't know or we have our reservations as to what it is that's happening or what is not happening, let's talk about the things that we do know. We know that there's stop and search. Few times I'm coming home from work late in the evening along the Life Camp roundabout. You see serious armed men stopping car by car. They'll search your pockets, search the car, check the pigeonhole, one car after the other. We know that they are doing that. That is clear. We know that there was a Trademore incident that was obvious. We know that there was a Maraba incident that was obvious. So while we may say we're not very certain about, there's no smoke without fire. That's the way to put it. So we can see that certain things are happening regarding exactly the warning. So I was talking to a few of my friends from different security agencies yesterday. Like, what's up? What's going on? I think one of the most shocking thing I got to realize is that there's no information sharing in our security infrastructure. And it is really, really sickening to see that, because each and every one of them from different security agencies had a different idea of first-hand information as to what they think is happening. So it doesn't really make sense. I think
so, Mukhtar, just to write on that, if the president is always meeting these security chiefs, every time, and then in between them they are not talking, what is the problem?
We had a training some weeks ago, sometime early in September, where we brought, it was on data rights, information access and information sharing for citizens, for security personnel. And we brought people from different security parastatals to come for the training. And they were fighting. Oh, you guys don't give us information. It was really interesting to watch. So it was interesting and appalling at the same time, because it was so obvious that there is a big lag in terms of communication within our security infrastructure, and they really, really, really need to plug that, because if they don't have that, not just even the security infrastructure, even within the government themselves. A few days ago, we saw the finance minister come out and say CBN did not consult with them for the change of the currency. And then all of a sudden, yesterday, Buhari came out and said he's supporting CBN.
And the finance minister is on the board to ensure, yes.
So it doesn't make sense. So many issues are...
So that's exactly what I wanted to even ask you again.
Really.
I mean, the conversation to go now, the issue of the lead story of Daily Trust this morning, which says CBN has my backing. You know, Buhari coming out to defend the CBN action, to say that he has his blessings and that he believes is going to be good for the Naira and all that. So what do you make of that?
I think, well, the president, I don't know why the president is picking sides per se. I think it was something of calling both of them to sit down. What were the issues? Let's resolve it, because that's part of his job as a leader. But he didn't do that. I don't know if he did that anyway, but this is what we saw on the news anyway. So, but speaking on the Naira issue change thing, a few days before this came out, on my status again, I posted, we're discussing about inflation. And I was telling people, secondary school inflation is the consistent and persistent rise of the price of commodities over a given period of time. And we know that one of the primary causes of inflation is too much money in circulation. And I was saying that there's need for the CBN and the government to find a way to control the money in circulation. And lo and behold, a few days later, boom, the change in Naira came in. I think it's a good policy. But the question of whether it is a good policy with a good intent and how to match that together with whether or not it will be carefully implemented properly, that's another thing. Okay. When we say that, I remember that day when I posted that, somebody asked me, when you say that there's so much money in circulation, the question is, you know that it is the top 1% that has so much money in circulation. The money is not trickling down to everybody else. So they are the ones causing the inflation. So
that's exactly what the president was saying yesterday. That for people with legitimate money, though of course I don't think having too much money does not mean it's illegitimate. But he was saying that because you know there is this worry that the time is too short, people will face difficulty trying to move their money into the banks and all that. But the president was arguing that that would be for the thieves or something like that.
But I agree. If you cannot, if you have in this short, if I had, why would I have 10 million in cash now? I don't know if you understand. Why should I have 10 million in cash in my house? So if you're going to move the money in and you know it's legitimate, too much money is not an illegitimate money anyway. But if you know you're going to move money and you know that it's not illegitimate, that means you have a backing as to why that money exists. Go dump it in the bank and justify it.
So it's a plus, you know, on the fight against corruption.
If it is carefully implemented. That is the part that because if anything, the government has a precedent of nonchalance and some level of pockets of incompetence here and there. So we are hoping that they actually do it very well. And if they do and execute it the proper way that they should, we're hoping that.
All right, let's take a look at let's take a look at the story on Daily Trust, the newspaper on page 3, in depth, that says residents and business owners rejoice as electricity supply improves in Jos. You know, a lot of people would say, was it that bad to the extent that, you know, right now with a little bit of increase, you know, you're rejoicing over the supply?
I usually say this, it's people don't get 0 over 100. You don't have to get 0 over 100 to fail an exam. If you get 40 something, it's also a fail. But for that to have happened, we cannot deny that there's not been improvement in the power supply in the country, and that's a good credit to the government. I don't know about Jos and where it was before, but even as epileptic as it is, still is, for people to rejoice over that, it tells you how deteriorated it was in the first place. Exactly. We're hoping. I don't know how they want to circumvent that issue and how they're going to ensure steady power, but steady power is a big driver of the economy. Look at how happy people are that they've asked power, they've not had to spend money on alternative source of power, and that has really, really helped their businesses, which is a good thing, honestly.
All right, let's turn.
I think, sorry, if
Okay,
I may
yeah,
even
go
add
ahead.
this in, I think one of the weirdest things I've ever experienced was some months ago, we were at the National Assembly, and we're discussing power reform, the EP, the Electricity Power Sector Reform Act. Yes, we're discussing the review and all of that. So the Minister of Power was there, Minister of State for Power was there, the chairman for the Senate Committee, like almost everybody, TCN, ECN, RE, everybody were there, and the light went off. I'm not joking. It's National Assembly. It went off for at least 10 minutes.
Wow.
It was the weirdest thing I've seen. And I was like, okay, this is good.
Is
Shows the importance of this.
All right, so let's take a look at city and crime. And we have a very interesting story here that talks about the Sokoto village head and 10 others arrested over drug trafficking. Now, reports have it that, they were arrested with 991,320 pills of pharmaceutical opioids and 1,251 kilogram of Indian hemp.
Interesting. I think the polarization of drugs in Nigeria has been a big issue that we've been trying so hard to actually curb, or not even trying. I don't think the government is even trying hard enough, honestly, because it's you travel out of the country and then you see how controlled that system is, where you cannot just go and buy Panadol, something like that, without the doctor's prescription, because Panadol can be abused. Any drug can be abused. So because of that, there's always this strong control for those things in those countries. We're hoping that they can do the same. But the problem with doing the same in Nigeria is with the inefficiency of the medical sector right now, and doctors moving out in rapid numbers. Last time we saw the statistics was one doctor to 5,000 patients, which is very, very poor. That means if everybody has to go to the hospital to get prescription, it's going to take a toll on the well-being of citizens in its entirety. So there's this cause and effect to most of these things that actually allow crimes like this to actually thrive, because of the lapses of the government in ensuring that doctors have conducive environment where they can work in the country. Things like this, it's difficult to put policies in place that can curtail the movement of drugs in chemists, in just every chemist or any pharmacy, and that is something that we really, really need to check.
All right, so on that particular page, you have stories that talks about Kwara poisoning sagas. Autopsy shows housewife died from taking sniper, says police. You also have 2 villagers, tracing their rustled cow killed in Suleja. 2 brothers, 1 other arrested in Kwara over abduction of boy in Nasarawa. And then a story that was everywhere. Police arrest Borno housewife for poisoning husband, saying she hates marriage. But, this is actually her second husband, apparently. She was previously married, she left, and then, she married this man the second time and poisoned him. And it took her 1 week to think about it.
Last week, we're at Kano for a training on child, early and forced marriage and sexual and gender-based violence for religious leaders and community leaders in local communities. And then at the beginning of the training, we do this contextual thing where we discuss the ripple effect of forced marriages and how that affects society at large, community well-being and all of that. And one of the participants shared a story of something that she was called. She's a religious leader in her community. She was called to come and try and address the issue. What happened? The wife overheard the family speaking outside that they shouldn't worry, that she's already okay with the marriage because they already have like a child now, that they're already okay with the marriage, so there's no issue. Whatever issue she had from the beginning has already been settled. If not, she won't have children now. Now she already has it. And then she came out and told them that, is it because of this child? That's why they think she's okay with this marriage. And she threw the child in the well.
What?
Yes. Now, it goes a long way to say, I think marriage is a beautiful thing. I do think it's a beautiful thing. I think companionship is good. We should all get that as much as we can. But we shouldn't have to force it on people. If somebody says they don't want to do it, it might sound unnatural to you, but it's okay for them. For as far as they're not harming anybody else. They're not harming anybody else. You're not doing anything to anybody else. stay your state. Do your day, make a day my day. You know, it's because these things are really happening. I heard a lot of sad stories. I don't think because if I start sharing most of them, if I start sharing most of them, this is going to be a gloomy show, really. But it's really, really painful because the upside of that training and what we've been doing since the beginning of the year under the USA project was we've been talking to local leaders, community heads, Sharia court judges. So we've been hearing the most absurd things that happens in these local communities. Of all of it, since the beginning of the year, this was one of the, just last week, this is one of the ones that actually stuck to me the most. She said she just came out and just said, is it because of this child? If we think I'm okay with this marriage.
Just to prove a point.
And she threw the child in the well. It's the wildest, whether the child survived or not, I don't know. We didn't, after that, everybody just, everybody was taken aback. But we really hope that we can actually do more to address these things. There is enough blame to go around. What's it called? An issue is not an excuse to commit a crime. She has committed a crime. I hope she faces the full extent of the law. But we also should, from our own side as a society, try not to impose that social agreement on people. So if she doesn't want to get married, leave her and let her be.
Wow, that's quite really heart-wrenching, you know. Okay, let's look at the Punch newspaper, where we have a story talking about oil earning, dipping. Of course, I know this may not be a surprise to you, considering all that we know about this oil theft and all that. Okay, and I saw the ministers talking about 700,000 barrels missing. What's your take on this?
I saw a Peter Obi's interview over the weekend where he was saying that it is no secret that the people stealing the oil are actually the governments themselves. I'm inclined to actually believe him. Why? I saw the, what was it called? I saw the pipe, what do they call it? There's a name they call it. Those things they attach to the main pipe to steal the oil out of, I forgot what they call it. And there's no way someone would have carefully did that without you noticing. I was reading some tweets from some people who work in the oil and gas sector, and they said there's this pressure thing that exists in the offices of most of, that is, what do they call them? This oil, I've forgotten their name, the agency in charge of that. That even if the pressure drops by one, they notice. So you cannot tell me that and there's a way they calculate it such that how much barrel leaves the main plant or wherever it is that it's coming from, how it passes, if it's dropping, if the pressure of what is moving from the beginning is dropping anywhere in the middle of the pipe. The reason they did that is just to note leakages. So you can know that, oh, something is leaking somewhere. So there's no way they would have not known
with all those pipes connected.
That people were
stealing the thing
out of it for how many years? It is disgusting.
Someday, I see stories saying, 5, 7, up to 9 years. That
people have been stealing this for years, and then you're telling us that you just noticed. It doesn't make sense, really. Like I've said this before on this show. If for issues like this, if the government does not know, it speaks a lot to their position in the country. And if they do know, it speaks a lot about their nonchalance. And if they do know, it speaks a lot about their position in the country.
So, what do you think the figures, 288 billion in one quarter that we lost, how do you quantify that loss? What could have been, of what use? I mean, what significance is this amount?
Do you know what 288 billion would do for, say, the health sector? And how many hospitals you could actually renovate and push up to standard with 288 billion? That's a lot of money. People underestimate the distance between 1 million and 1 billion. Like, because it's 1, you think it's 1 billion is not easy to come by. Then talk about 288 billion, not 2.88, 280. If I have 288 billion, I will retire.
All right. Well, while we're talking about oil still, a story on Daily Trust carried, the headline that says oil firms are to pay 138 billion naira petroleum tax. So does that mean more suffering for Nigerians, especially when it comes to, availability of fuel?
I don't
No,
know
I
how.
think this is something that they have already paid from the story, if you read it. So
Okay.
it's not like they are paying.
Okay,
It's,
they've already paid.
I think it's a
It's an
data from
agreement.
it's a data from NMPC, given what has happened, I think, in the half year. They have made this money.
I've not really read the story,
Okay.
so I'm not, I don't really know much about that. But I know I heard, what's his name? The Governor Basaki, sometime last week, where he was saying that there is need for us to remove the fuel subsidy so that the money can be repurposed for other things, which I totally agree with. But it still comes back to that argument of, if you're going to remove the fuel subsidy, make sure that the thing that is basic amenity is available. There's light. There's steady power.
But this
away your fuel subsidy.
This fuel subsidy is something that is very naughty, as you know, and of course, obviously, the Buhari government is shipping it up to the next government. And as the Guardian newspaper this morning is talking about it, it says doubts persist over the over immediate subsidy removal by the next government. Do you think that a government will come in his honeymoon and then
you see, that's one of the major problems we have in the country, honestly, that I've noticed. It is that we are scared of making tough decisions because we're not ready to live up to the responsibilities that comes with those decisions. If you ensure and you justify that there's steady power in the country now, let's remove fuel subsidy because that's what other countries are doing. Yes, there will be backlashes, but it won't be as much as would be expected. If you ensure that there's a good internal transport network across the state, there's a functioning train that serves as interstate and intrastate, and all of that has been taken care of to ensure that the common man does not suffer the price of fuel. Then you have actually alleviated the issue. You can remove the fuel subsidy at that point. So anybody who is buying fuel can actually come. Because we see the same thing with ASU and the federal government. Nobody wants to be the one that says, oh, privatize the system. When we all know that the easiest solution to that problem is to privatize the educational system. But nobody wants to bear the brunt of it, of saying, oh, you were the one that said privatize the system. Oh, I was the one that did the privatizing of the system. It is that thing. So we should, we should be able to make decisions, tough decisions, and be ready to live with the responsibilities that come with them.
All right, thank you so much, Mukhtar Suleiman, for the insight on the stories this beautiful morning. We're done with the newspaper analysis, and thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, so we'll take a quick break, and when we return, the show continues.
But in a situation where you find that they look like the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
That's great.
Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. Well, it is the top of the hour, and if you just tuned in, you're watching Daybreak on Trust TV. I'm Dashan Husseina Usman.
Okay, and I'm Abdulaziz. Abdulaziz, thank you for staying with us, and your show, the favorite morning show, Daybreak on Trust Television.
All right, let's take a look at the highlights at this hour. On terror threat, British Airways resumes London-Abuja flight.
Borno housewife kills husband with poison.
Under 17 World Cup, Nigeria beats Germany, win bronze medal.
Now let's go to the details of the stories. United Kingdom carrier British Airways has resumed its London-Abuja flight BA83 after cancelling the flight for 2 days. The BA83 flight from London Heathrow to the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja, was suddenly diverted to Lagos on Thursday. The development caused outcries among affected passengers who complained that there was no adequate notice. Though BA did not provide any reason for the decision, the diversion of the flight might not be unconnected with the terror alert in Abuja, with several foreign missions, including the US, UK, Australia, Germany, among others, issuing travel warnings to their citizens. The London-Abuja flight now departs 8:10 hours and arrive at 15:15 hours instead of the previous 22:25 hours and 4:40 hours, respectively.
The Borno State Police Command said it has arrested housewife Fatima Abubakar, 25 years, for allegedly killing her husband, Gwani Abba, with poison. The Commissioner of Police, Mr. Abdul Omar, who disclosed this to the news agency of Nigeria in Maiduguri, said the suspect was arrested on October 19 by men of the command at Ongwandoki. Omar said that the victim, who was the chief imam of the area, returned from the mosque when the suspect, who was the second wife, allegedly mixed poison in his food. He explained that as soon as Gwani started eating, his condition deteriorated. According to him, the victim was immediately taken to the state specialist hospital where he was given emergency medical attention, but unfortunately, he later died when they returned home.
Meanwhile, in sports, the Nigerian under-17 women's football team Flamingos on Sunday beat Germany 3-2 on penalties to win bronze at the World Cup in India. The Flamingos had raced to a 3-0 lead, but the Germany came back to draw 3-3 before they lost 3-2 during the shootouts. Both teams started the competition playing against each other, with the Germans coming back from a goal down to win 2-1 at the Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru Stadium in Goa. President of NFF Alhaji Ibrahim Musa Gusau, who has been with the team in India since the quarter-final stage, said he was delighted with the triumph. The victorious Flamingos are due back in Nigeria on Tuesday.
All right, with that, we'll move on to more stories. Rented crowds at political rallies is a common phenomenon during electioneering in Nigeria. People are often induced with gifts and all kinds of monetary promises to form a large crowd at political campaign venues. In this report, Bello Musa speaks to analysts who opined that political crowd renting only promotes thuggery and hinders democratic growth. The report.
Rented crowd is when one hired people to form large crowd at the political rally, protest, or other public events. Individuals are often attracted to attend political rally by inducing them with money or other gift to create a large crowd for a particular candidate or political party. Many, however, believe rented crowd is a deceit and setback to the growth of democracy.
So usually such crowds, to me, to my own understandings, is deceit. They rented the crowd to deceive the people. Yes. You find out, especially if people are disenchanted. They would not like to come to that political event. So what will they do? Is to sponsor people to come. And at the end of the day, you see them giving people 1,000 naira, 500 naira.
Some believe that unless leadership recruitment process is addressed, Nigerians will continue to witness renting of crowd, vote buying, and other irregularities in the electoral process.
So we should have a leader that is bold enough to stand up That's why I said earlier on, to unite the people, we have to address the leadership question in Nigeria. Unless we address it now, it will boomerang in the near future. Because the army of unemployed youths I'm seeing around is disturbing. We have almost a near collapse system. If you look at our education, if you look at about health.
Electoral Act 2022 as amended, it comes with a lot of provisions. And those provisions that the Electoral Act come with provide for certain level of punishment for people who, most especially thuggery, vote buying, renting crowd to be part of political activities. I think the Electoral Act has taken care of that. What needed to be done is for the government to follow it up to implement those Electoral Act. I think the police, or rather the security agencies, should be able to work assiduously in ensuring that they carry out the responsibility as assigned to them by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
As campaigns gather momentum, some unemployed may be bracing up for opportunity to be paid at political rallies, though voter has admonished not to allow money to influence their choice of political leaders in 2023. Bello Musa, Trust TV News, Kaduna.
Now, blacksmithing is an ancient practice of forging iron and metals into objects for use by farmers and other, and the general public. The artwork is still a source of livelihood for many in Maiduguri, in Borno State, but despite some challenges. Our correspondent Beatrice Kursi has this report on the issue.
Blacksmithing in Nigeria is an age-long occupation. It is found across all tribes, and the skill is transferred from generation to generation. Gamburu Market is one of Maiduguri's oldest trade center. It's also a home for blacksmiths' old technology that produces farm implements, bush traps, knives, axe, pots, and many more. All these are crafted from iron, silver, and gold. Baba Gana Usman inherited the metal work from his father, and he has been in the business for 35 years. He says the craft brings customers from here and neighboring countries. It's a trade that has not changed and still fetches proceeds for him.
Yanzu ma akasari ma cikin kashi uku din daya da rabi ma duk sun zo ne ba su da abin duk mun koya musu sana'a.
My father taught all of us blacksmith work right from childhood. I have 3 apprentices under me. People come from Chad, Niger, and Cameroon to buy what we make. We even forge car parts. I make like 5,000 naira daily. The business has helped me and my family a lot. I provide for them and sponsor my children's education. We get our raw materials from scrap dealers who sell old items like cars, something that's not useful anymore. We make more profits during the rainy season because it's the farming period. The only support we want is to empower the youth we have trained. Meanwhile, the goldsmith business is facing some challenges of working tools, machines, and mostly sourcing raw gold. The goldsmith dealers blame the poor patronage to border closure and insurgency. They only redesign, repair, and clean jewelries for customers. We get the gold from Saudi Arabia and Dubai. Most people here prefer those ones. We don't have the equipment that forge raw gold. We only fix earrings and necklaces that are old, and we also redesign and wash when it's faded. If we could be provided with all these things, the government will be shocked with what we can do, knowing that gold is where the money lies. Back then, when the town was safe, we get karat gold in kilos, but with the insurgency, it scared traders. So we only do some touches on the gold women bring to us. But now that peace has returned, we are hoping with support the business will start fully. And also we call on the government to open the borders to boost the business. Despite the challenges of the old metalwork and industrialized methods of forging tools, blacksmithing will always be a craft that will never fade.
Some traders at the popular Alaba International Market in Lagos State say they're still gripped by fear as the market was reopened for business on Tuesday after 5 days closure due to crisis that erupted in the market last week. Now, the chairman of Alaba International Amalgamated Traders Association Council of Sectional Heads, Mboni Joffrey, told Trust TV that the leaders of the park management are yet to sign the agreement reached, but they have concluded to reopen the market due to assurance from security agencies. The report.
Business activities has been restored in the market, which was open on Tuesday morning.
As you can see, this is part of Alaba International Market. The market has been open after 5 days, which was unlocked due to the crisis that erupted. However, the business is booming little by little, while the marketers are still complaining.
Some people are still afraid, thinking that there will still be riot again. Like some of my customers call. Market is a little bit down, but the situation I'm seeing now is okay.
The public relation officer of the Amalgamated Union in the market, Mohammed Buba, highlights some of the agreement reached by both parties.
You can see there is no more algorithms within the market, and everybody can buy his goods and go out without extorting money from him. As of today, there is nothing like that. Everybody is doing his business. My hope is let the government make sure they enforce this law and let it be as it is, as we are talking about.
The chairman of Alaba International Amalgamated Traders Association Council of Sectional Heads, Mboni Joffrey, disclosed that the leaders of the park management had yet to sign the agreement reached.
We are ready to pay the statutory fee approved by the local government, by the state, by the federal government. And the collection point should be outside the market, Alaba International Market environment, because this is an international market. And the amount to be paid should be known and agreed by both parties, and also received. Though they promise us they will ordain the mass, they are going to meet up with our demands. Thereafter, there was a communique between we and the park management representatives and the security agencies, which the SA and local government chairman instructed the legal department of Ojo local government to put it in writing, as we are all agreed, in order to make sure peace come back to Alaba International Market.
The hope of the traders and their customers is for the peace to be restored in the market for businesses to thrive.
Abbas Ibrahim Alibi, Trust TV, Lagos.
Well, that's a report from Lagos, and with that, we'll take a short breather. When we come back, the show continues.
My people, how do you feel when you see bulldozers demolish beautiful but illegally built private houses, estates, or plazas? Agony and pain. That is exactly what the FCT administration feels also. No responsible government is happy to inflict pain on her people by demolishing any property. Are you planning to acquire a piece of land? Avoid buying land from indigents or local chiefs or any other unauthorized source, as doing so could ruin your valuable investment. Only the Minister of FCT allocates land in Abuja. So, to acquire a piece of land in Abuja, go to the Abuja Geographic Information Systems, popularly known as AGIS, and obtain the relevant application form. Also, visit the FCDA Mass Housing Department to check the genuineness of land title before you acquire any property in any of the housing estates in Abuja. Do the right thing. Don't be a victim. This message is from the Federal Capital Territory Administration.
All right, welcome back, and thanks for staying with us. You're still watching Daybreak on Trust TV, and right now we'll move on to our discussion of the day. Now, the Central Bank of Nigeria is planning on replacing the naira currency to reduce excess cash, inflation, and crime. Although the currency could be in circulation as early as mid-December, Nigerians will have until the end of January to exchange the old bills, after which they will cease to be legal tender. This is the first time Nigeria will have changed the design of its currency in 2 decades. The bank will redesign and print new bills for the 200, 500, and 1,000 naira denominations, CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele told journalists during a news conference in Abuja. The action is part of authorities' efforts to halt the slide of the country's official tender, which has lost more than 35% of its value in the past year. Now, the CBN also said the measure will help tackle the issue of counterfeit notes and recall large amounts of money outside the bank's control. Now, today we have guests in the studio, but we will be beginning with Dr. Emeka Okengu. He's a development economist. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the show.
Yes, nice to be here.
All right, so let's begin with the rift between the Minister of Finance and the CBN governor. Okay, and she was actually disowning the position of the CBN. Why are they not on the same page? Well, before you actually answer that, let's take a look at a video of her disowning this whole issue.
That really you should call the monetary authorities because they're the competent authority to do this. We were not consulted. It was an announcement that we heard. And I've seen,
you just saw the press release like every other body.
Part of the reasons that was advocated is that's one of the ways to mop up liquidity to manage inflation. But there are also consequences that we're also looking at. What would the consequences be? There will be some benefits, but there will be some challenges. And I don't know whether the monetary authorities have actually looked very closely as what the consequences are and then how they can be mitigated. So I still advise that you have that discussion with the monetary authorities.
That policy statement, dollars have started going up.
Yes.
And that is the consequences, because the target is by January, when this will take effect, dollar will have hit like 1,000 naira to $1.
So I've said my opinion as a Nigerian. I've said my opinion as a Nigerian, not as the fiscal authority. First of all, as a fiscal authority, we were not aware of it. It was an announcement. Secondly, I think that's one of the ways that they're trying to use to manage inflation. But there are consequences that also need to be considered and how to manage those consequences.
Well, Mr. Emeka, still on the question. Now, the president has since come out to say that, the CBN has the backing of, has his backing for redesigning the naira notes. Do you think this puts an end to the rift between the Minister of Finance
I think what's important is that we don't personalize this because we're talking about authorities.
Okay.
And in any economy, you have your monetary policies and you have your fiscal policies. And there's no way, okay, one can function without the other, okay, because the fiscal policies are actually supposed to be a reflection, okay, of how you manage your monetary policies. I remember that hitherto until some while ago, the CBN was actually under the supervision of the fiscal authority. So if you look at it technically, your fiscal policies actually should drive your monetary policies. In my long years of development, this is the strangest I've seen or heard. Okay, that you can have the two most important authorities not being in the picture. And I can tell you this for certain. It's also not a position you take into because you are politically correct. There's some level of, what do I call it now, experience required, okay, for you to be able to head, such authority, either the monetary or the fiscal. So it's a major challenge, okay? And I haven't said that. Everybody seems to want to take sides, okay? There are no two sides to bad news. Bad news is bad news, okay? There's no other way to define a headache, as I call it a headache. what the CBN has done, like the Minister of Finance has said, has consequences, and we're beginning to see these consequences, okay? But what this action, let me answer you directly, also means is that you can actually now understand why we seem to be moving around in very crazy circles. Because if at the level of being minister, she's probably the most important minister in this administration, she is not aware that government wants to undertake such huge, humongous policy, okay, without her knowledge. And then you're telling me that the president has the backing and the rift is over. It's not about the president, okay? It is about Nigeria.
So talking of consequences of this policy, what are those, issues?
Haven't you still seen them? Are you not seeing them? First and foremost, even without taking that decision, the dollar was almost, spiral out of control. 2 days after taking it, the dollar is at 850 to a naira today. Do you know what that means? It technically means that your naira is dead. Okay, because the same thing you want to protect, you didn't protect well. Now, the people who have this cash you want to recover have just gone to convert it into Forex. All right? So, and remember that there's no policy you have, stopping the use of Forex. So it is going to get worse. And again, all the reasons that the CBN had given, about this, as right as they might appear, on paper, okay, it doesn't just add up. Remembering that it is the CBN that has lent over 20 trillion to this government that are now trying to, secretarize. It is the CBN that had thrown over 9 trillion, okay, into their interventionist program, okay, over which they're struggling to get back over 6.7 trillion. So if anybody is talking about these monies that are running around, who actually has been the major, precursor? It is the CBN.
Okay. Now, what do you think the CBN and the government, should have done differently? Because we have some analysts saying that instead of a redesign, that the governor should have advised a government to use, the floating mechanism to align the curve of the exchange rate.
The floating mechanism was on board, my sister, for more than 7 years. A lot of us had kept shouting on the floating mechanism. The same government refused to do it. Floating mechanism is not it's not a new idea. It's been there for over 6 years. Okay, and they are going to redesign. At what cost? Okay, you're talking about a currency that has no value. I mean, okay, listen, let's even be a little bit human here. Over 80% of our country is under the water, physically, technically. A lot of the people who live, there is no house in Bayelsa State, for instance, that is above ground. Now, what does that tell you? The banks are under the water. People's ATMs are under the water. People's checkbooks are under the water. People's properties are under the water. Ditto for practically 60% or more, okay, of that region. And some parts of northern Nigeria too. And you're asking these people to go to the banks to go and pay in their money. Are they going to be swimming to get into those vaults? Can't we be a little bit, can't we put a human face to this thing? Is this the right time? You have less than a month to Christmas. Okay, you have a government that's supposed to be exiting probably in the next 6 months. Is this what they're supposed to be doing? I thought that this time, for a government that is not going to be running for election, what they should be doing is to start putting their papers together. Because I mean, for you to be able to compile what you have done in 7 years, it's going to take a minimum of 6 months or more. Why aren't we focusing on that? And then the question will be, what is the hurry? Okay, what do we want to achieve? First and foremost, you tell us that. Can you equate how much the kidnappers has taken? I'm not trying to say that's right, okay, to how much that we have thrown into this Uncle Borrow's program that we need to recover. Can we equate that? Can we equate that with the monies we lose, by doing things that are untoward, by people who have, entrusted with their public trust? So who are we actually targeting?
Okay, now let's actually take you from where you talked about timing and introduce, a senior economist with SPM professionals joining us virtually, Mr. Paul Alaje. Good morning and thank you for joining us on Daybreak.
Good morning, thank you so very much for having me.
All right, so first of all, can you share with us your opinion on the redesigning of Naira notes, and what about the timing? Do you think this time is actually the right time?
Thank you once again. First, I've made my opinion known on the several pages of newspaper, and one of the major television station, which is your TV station, I was with your correspondent last week to make this opinion known. Number one, the timing is wrong. The timing is wrong because around November, December, you have sporadic exchange of money, which we economists call velocity of money. Around December, November to December, people want to travel. Most transactions are done via cash, but not via electronic means. That gives a lot of concerns when people would have to take the cash first to their bank and bring it back again. And I've studied several countries of the world. The time they do currency redesign is not close to an election year or close to end of the year, because that could cause a number of chaos. Some banks are already overstretched in some areas where there are no activity in other areas. So to balance it, I have given my advice that I think a monetary authority should slow down and start this sometimes in January or February, mid-January or early February, if this policy must be done. That's what answers the question of time. The policy itself, there are several arguments that have been matched out. First, we want to control inflation. The money outside the banking system is over 80%. And I provided answer to each of these reasons raised by the monetary authority. The concern about inflation, 50% of inflation today is not affected by money supply. 50% of inflation is caused by insecurity as caused by food scarcity. This is not my figure. The National Bureau of Statistics says food inflation remains the driver of inflation in Nigeria. Another 30% that is drawing inflation really sporadically is exchange rate, because significant proportion of what we consume in Nigeria are imported. Myself, I put on a suit. The other presenter, the other analyst or colleague in your studio put up maybe a native dress. But let me tell you, the two of us, our clothes are both imported. The way they sew his clothes in Nigeria is the way they sew my clothes in Nigeria. So, but where are the jobs? The jobs are not in Nigeria. The jobs are outside. Whether you dress like an Englishman or you dress like African, that is only in the expression of our thinking. What am I saying in essence? We import virtually everything, from phone to television to cameras to shoes to everything. That is what is driving inflation, because when your exchange rate is weaker, your prices will be higher. So locally, it is not just excess money supply, which could be a reason, but that accounts for less and less. Again, it's been a long time we changed the value of money. The question is, what do our people want? Nigerians watching at home, Nigerians watching in different remote areas and in urban centers. Improvement in the value of Naira. The question is, will this make 100 Naira stronger? Will this make 200 Naira stronger, or will it be poorer? Announcement of the policy, the markets responded to it. That is Nigeria, the exchange responded to it. It was bearish. The FX market responded to it. Naira jumped from what it was, which we're struggling with. It jumps to something really very annoying. Therefore, do I think that this policy is right for Nigeria now? The answer is no. I remember the evening when the policy was announced. I was speaking with journalists, and they asked for my candid opinion, and I mentioned to them that this will make, you will see a spike in dollar by the end of tomorrow. And that's exactly what happened, because politicians that you want to control, according to monetary authority, they are not dumb. They will take their money to FX market. And when there is demand for FX, demand for dollar, 1 Naira is not demanded for, the price will increase. Those of us that are doing a legitimate business, those of us that still buy imported commodity because we don't have option for local one, we will be affected. And this is why we are telling the monetary authority to please rethink. It is good that you want currency to be redesigned in your tenure, but please, if it's going to affect people, it will be selfish for us to continue with this policy without thinking it through.
But Mr. Alaje, do you think, taking back the step already taken will change anything? If, for example, the CBN today announced that it is shelving this idea for now, will it change any trend that has already started?
It will change trends. It will change trends, even though you see.
So then what is the point of saying...
sometimes.
So then what is the point if it won't change?
So you have started seeing people will go back to the market and exchange their dollar back to Naira because they thought there would be a policy. That means pressure on Naira will reduce. 2, if you do this, those that want to travel, people are. There was a president who decided, I don't know who advised him, to remove subsidy. You know, when people travel around December to January, he lost an election. Don't play with people's sensitivity and culture. We cannot change the culture overnight. So I believe it will change because the timing is wrong and the policy has not been subjected to critical thinking before it was announced.
Okay, now let's come back to Mr. Emeka. Now, the CBN actually cited, insecurity as the reason. How practical is it? And, what is the benefit of such exercise?
What is insecurity? What reasons are they giving for insecurity? Did insecurity stop them from disbursing 9 trillion? Did it? Now, if you have insecurity, what do? You withdraw your money, you redesign your money, or you strengthen your security forces to tackle insecurity, which is what to do. Okay? And are we not, seeing how we're running, in insecurity? Is our special forces, are they not trying their best to keep us safe amidst all this hullabaloo of insecurity? There will always be insecurity when you have inflation. I mean, you have a population growth that is not commensurate, with your economic growth. Why wouldn't you have insecurity? People are losing jobs. Why wouldn't you have insecurity? These are functions of very bad, badly thought, badly implemented policies of government. And it is happening because your fiscal policy is at, some parallel, with your monetary policy. And you now have, a man who thinks that he has, he can pull out a pen and then he starts using money belonging to, the commonwealth of people to what he thinks is the way to go. There is no doubt there's insecurity. And we expected insecurity. You always have insecurity the moment you don't have social security programs. We don't have any social safety nets. Okay. Now remember that this insecurity you call insecurity is actually people's businesses. People are eking a living out of it. All right. It is the failure of a holistic national development plan. Okay. You don't even know how many you are. You don't know where people are located. You are not able to monitor on real time what people are doing. You don't have any facilities. Look at Kaduna, for instance. For those, who knew Kaduna in the heydays of Kaduna, you couldn't pass Kakuri. It was a 24-hour, industry. As people were finishing from shift 1, people were entering into shift 2. Shift 1 goes to sleep. Shift 2 goes to work. Everybody was happy. Ditto for Oshangawata. Ditto for every other place that you had, production. And so each time people like us talk about productivity, as a major means to ending insecurity, it is not withdrawing. It is not using insecurity. Some of us saw the Civil War, okay, where, I can't remember, as a very young person, I remember clearly my mom was cooking, beans, and there was nothing in that beans. I think it was just only water. And somebody jumped into my compound, carried both the pot of beans, the beans and the pot on the fire, and jumped across the fence again. That you're going to start witnessing that. In fact, at one time, there were stories of people stealing people's soup pots in the Maraba area. In Abuja here, you are going to get to that point. So it is not a question of citing. I think this is insensitive, just to put it lightly. Okay, it is inhuman. Okay, because if you considered insecurity, then this should have not been a policy you should be putting now that you have, people who are drowning, people who are in IDP camps, people who have lost property, people who have lost homes. What can be more insensitive than that?
Well, so one of the things that you highlighted earlier, you alluded to it, but I know that it's a very heated issue in the, among economists, the issue of the way and means window that the CBN has granted the federal government a lot of money. How is that affecting, our the monetary maze that we are in?
You see, when you throw money at problems, when you don't think things through, okay, what you don't have is a think through attitude. You wake up in the morning and you say, oh, we're going to be giving loans or grants or whatever to states, and then you start throwing trillions at these states. You have not found out what they did with what you gave to them in the first instance. All right? And then I want to ask, who has seen an audit report of what the states had done with these monies that were given to them? And at one time you wake up again and say you're going to start withdrawing the money from source from them. That's not how you treat money. Money is not candy or flowers that you throw around anyhow. Okay, money has to have a proper process where a proper engagement program. What I expected federal government to do at that point in time they were trying to bail out the states was first and foremost insist that if this was going to be for people's salaries or worker salaries, tie it to the IPPIS. Okay, so that people get their alerts. Now, because if, and again, this is how I was brought up. I mean, I had a father who says to me, if you can't manage 10 naira, you can't manage 10,000. Okay? Now, you didn't ask the states, all right, well, it's not as if you have not been giving you your revenue, share. It's not as if you have not been getting money. What have you done with it? Was any audit conducted?
Okay. All right. Let me forward this question to Mr. Paul. Now, Mr. Paul, the CBN governor said, this particular policy or the redesigning of the Naira note will help in the minting of e-Naira. And also the CBN spokesman said the effort will, among other goals, deepen Nigeria's push to entrench cashless economy in the face of increased minting of the e-Naira. Some people seem to think that this is another way of forcing the masses to accept the e-Naira. What's your take on this?
Well, I have a very personal, because of other information I have about e-Naira. And I remember that the following day after e-Naira was introduced, I was invited by journalists to speak to e-Naira, and I made my position clear, even though there are other information that may not be safe for the public to consume. But I can tell you that economies, not just Nigeria, are introducing CBDCs. In Nigeria, it is called e-Naira. In other environments, different economies are introducing this money. But please, we need to act with a lot of caution. When people accept digital currency beyond they accept currency of fiat, it might mean that they are surrendering their freedom to monetary authority. And I can explain that to you. When you have e-Naira that is solely controlled, instead of what we learn in economics, banks are supposed to have interaction with the citizen. And in exchange of all the transfers, all the payments you've made, all the checks you have issued, such exchange should be done at the close of business by central bank. This one, the central bank wants to omit the bank and go directly to the citizen. It's a way of the states having direct access to the control, the finance of individuals, which is very detrimental. Because at the end of the day, that freedom that individual has may be surrendered on the platter of digitalization to government or to government or to authorities. And I don't think what economics across the world, we are speaking against such moves. Money is already digitized by bank apps. There is nothing e-Naira is doing that our mobile app from banks are not doing. The only thing they may not do is the control that may eventually be introduced. And that is exactly what some of us economists across the globe, in our association, in our meeting, we are speaking against, that government should give guarantee or assurance that these monies will eventually not be used to manipulate or to control people in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years. And this conversation is not because of who is in central bank today. It's also because of the future. Imagine there is another lockdown. There is another lockdown, and you are using e-Naira as means, you cannot go out. It is possible for monetary authority to control that your e-Naira will not walk more than 1 kilometer, more than 3 kilometers beyond where you are living, which means your freedom of movement to purchase is completely taken off from you. So it's so important for us to tread with a lot of caution. And I highlighted a number of concerns I have about e-Naira. It is not improving the value of Naira. Whether you call it digital or physical, it's still the same Naira that is getting weakened by the day. Secondly, the currency of fiat, central bank have said, oh, this money is getting dirty. We have not changed the culture of our people. If you have not changed culture of Nigeria, even if you print your money again today, it will still go to the same market, somewhere in Akampa, somewhere in Popo Yemoja, somewhere in Ororo, somewhere in Nigeria, that women will still keep it the way they know how to keep it best. Men, on their farms, they will still open their soil, put it right inside, bury it. That is the way they know. We need to educate people on proper management of money. That is on the second hand. On the third hand, the currency of fiat will reduce, where naira. It is because central bank can now manipulate, can now rearrange how they want money supply to go into circulation. But the question is, what was central bank looking at over the years that they lost track of over 2 trillion? So if you say that you lost track of 2 trillion out of 3 trillion plus, give us a guarantee that when you have new monies, you are not going to lose track of them. It is a question that has not been responded to by monetary authority.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Alaje. We'll just go on a short break. The show will continue in a moment, please.
Nigerians, elections are here again. Let us shun violence. Let us play the game according to the rules. Do not be a thug. Say no to violence. Let's rise and defeat violence, crime, and sabotage against the peace of our nation. Nigeria is the only country we have. We must do everything to keep it united. We must avoid any act that promotes hate and disintegration. Say no to separatist movement, terrorism, fake news, hate speech, religious bigotry, and any act that tends to divide us as a nation. Watch out for strange gatherings and suspicious movements. Restrict access to sensitive documents and data, the disclosure of which may damage national security. Educate your staff and family, particularly on measures to safeguard information and report security breaches. Apply relevant legal security guidelines to protect yourself and your neighbors. Due to misinformation and wrong choices, some idle persons resort to vices in their greed to get rich quick. They resort to kidnapping, killings for rituals, and other heinous crimes. Avoid wrong use of the social media. Before you broadcast that false message, think twice. Ask whether it will promote peace or violence. For safety at home, still be security conscious. Educate your household on safety tips. Report all suspicious movements and persons to the security agencies nearest to you. Be a good citizen. Be patriotic. To pass security information, please call 0813-222-2105, 0915-339-1309, 0908-837-3514, or send a mail to dsspr@dss.gov.ng. This message is from the Department of State Services, DSS.
Thanks for staying with us. It's been Daybreak on Trust TV, and the discussion this morning is on the matters arising from the CBN's decision to redesign higher denomination of the naira, that is 100 naira, 200 naira, 500 and 1,000 naira, and the reactions that is generating from economists and other Nigerians. And we are joined this morning by three distinguished economists to discuss this. And at this point, I would want to bring Mr. One of our guests here, Mr. Obona Okuku. And my question this morning, is on the timing now. Do you think this is really a good time for us to have this policy in the light of all the reasons that the CBN marshaled out?
There's never a bad time to take a good decision. I say that because if we look at the issues associated with this particular program, the security, them being able to control the circulation of naira, and also making sure that, you know, those who have sophisticated, the people have more sophisticated style and programs to, create the counterfeit. So, I mean, these are things that has to be done. So if we're looking at, is it timely? So when would be the best time? Is it when you have a lot of counterfeit in the market, or is it when? So pretty much anyhow you want to look at it, there's always, so far you want to take a decision as a leader of a particular sphere, I mean, you go ahead and take the decision. Whether you like it or not, nobody will die at the end of the day, because the situation will still remain the same whether you take the decision or not. So, I mean, I don't see anything wrong with them taking the decision at this point in time. So mine is, do you have the approvals to do that? That's my interest. If you have the approvals, if you've looked at your chest and then you have what it takes to carry it out, why not go ahead and carry it out?
You are saying nobody is going to die, but what other people are saying is that, that of course some people will die, in court, maybe literally, in the sense of inflation that we are seeing. One of the things that the CBN said is that this will cut down on inflation. But with what is happening at the FX parallel market, is that really something that is good for the economy at this time?
No, you can't say that, because I mean, like on the flip side, because every decision has its, the backlash or what's the repercussions. On the flip side, yes, a lot of people want to take those monies and go into sectors where they can hide the money, because most of the time, people who are hoarding, they have a reason why they are hoarding, and it's always a very criminal or very negative reason. That's why they hoard. So if you're going to hoard, so you're going to move that money away and then start to either purchase FX, which is also on the negative. I've had this discussion and I said, if central bank decides to go this route, they should be holistic in their plan. You don't just single out, okay, I want to do this, but you need to also look at the multiplier effect. How do you protect monies going into, FX? There has to be a system where you don't allow, people go back to the black market to, begin to mop up FX, which will also affect us invariably. So if it's to have that decision or carry out this program, in isolation, I won't agree with them. But if you have a program designed, yes, in sane nations, these kind of things happen, and then you have, monitoring systems where you know where all the monies are going to go to. But if they don't, they should not try it, because one, a lot of funds are going to go into real estate. People are going to move funds from where they are herding them to, real estate, which they don't have, ways to match them. But if you have, why not? You can try. You can go ahead.
Forward this question to Mr. Emeka. Now, what about the middlemen, the banks? Are they prepared for this? Do you think there are measures already put in place to ensure that these banks have the capacity to manage the operational pressure that comes with the process?
Which of the processes?
That's
the e-Naira.
Yes, no, not e-Naira. The reissuance of, taking in old notes and collecting new notes.
You see, like I told you when we started this conversation, I said to you that if you look at the past 7 years, what you've done is what they call the fire brigade approach. And you don't solve problems by somebody thinking that he understands what he's talking about, because there's always a second opinion. And that's why they say, when you have heads put together, you make more traction. CBN has led us to where we are now, and it's going to lead us into more damage. First, it started with the FX Aboki, if you remember. We started chasing one online trader with everything we had. In fact, the CBN governor himself, came to give a press conference on FX Aboki. And some of us said, no, that's not the issue, bro. Okay, the issue is that your Naira is very weak. And the only way you can give strength to this Naira is to get back into production and productivity. Thereafter, they said, oh, we now have currency speculators. We'll go after the BDCs. Licenses were cancelled. Thereafter, some of us said, why don't you just allow the value of this money, your money? Because I'm coming to where the banks can play a role now. And if you look at the conditions that the CBN has given the banks to be able to deal, you find out that that's where the banks can't even do much. Okay? If you do not have the proper infrastructure and superstructure for you to function effectively and efficiently, you can't. And I tell you why. It is not about granting loans. What is important is not for you to go and get a loan. And if you go and check, Nigeria is one of the few countries in the world that is still using collateral lending. Every other country, inclusive of Ghana, which is next door to us, has gone into what they call the cash flow based lending. What does it mean? That out of your outputs, we can now begin to now guarantee funding to you. But what you do in Nigeria is that for you to be able to get any loan, you must have value of over 140% of the money you're asking for what they call the first sale values. So a lot of the banks we now have just become some depositors' vineyard, if you may. You bring in money, you take money out. And if you, I think I want you guys to do a vox post on this. Take your camera into a bank and say, okay, let's even talk to your business development desk. Do you have people who can sit with people and be able to, appreciate how do people get in their business, their plans? What you call your bankable studies of what impact is that business plan to the collateral that the person is giving to you to be able to take money. So I will not in one sweep say to you, oh, the banks are not ready, because you also have one of the finest and best people there. We have very good people who are in the banking system. But I think holistically, our country is not wired to help banks to help you.
Okay. So we'll come back to that, but let's now go to Mr. Alaje, who is joining us virtually from Lagos. Now, do you think, like with all this, taking together what you have said earlier, that the CBN is at its wit's end, or what? I said, would you say, from all this, taking together what you have said earlier and the issues that, Mike and the other guests in the studio, Okoko, were saying, would you say that maybe the CBN is at its wit's end regarding management of our currency?
Well, I would say that central bank might have had advice from some persons, or they might feel that economy could solely be adjusted by monetary tools, but it is clear that that policy has not been properly criticized. It has not been properly critiqued. That policy has not been properly subjected to several other thinkings. That is why maybe the central bank governor made an announcement. And the implication will be on Naira. So I mentioned it to Nigerians the very day that policy was announced, that be ready in a matter of 24 hours, a sporadic increase in the rate of dollars. And many people have said, oh, yes, it's expected in the medium term. I also mentioned to those who says that, oh, don't worry, we are going to see reduction in the value of dollar. As I remember when primary was on, people had said that the rate of dollar to Naira will come down immediately after primary. I want anybody here to tell me, has there been a time since after the primary of all the major political parties ended that the value of Naira to dollar, Naira started improving? Naira will not improve because Nigerians are losing confidence. Okay, and you see, why you are all seated on your chairs today is because you have faith that the chairs you are sitting on will not fall you down. So central bank must rekindle.
All right, thank you so much. Sadly, time is not on our side, so but thank you so much for joining us on the show today. We have to actually stop you here and get the final take of Mr. Okoko. Now, while you're telling us, we're wrapping up, the IMF has actually urged caution in Nigeria's currency notes redesign plan, saying that they're ready to offer assistance if the country needed one. What's your take on this? Should we opt for that or continue with the redesign?
When IMF offers, we have to still sit down and look at it. Bring it on the table. We all look at it. Experts will sit around the program and see if it's going to be beneficial to us. If it's not, we can leave it. But nevertheless, if what the central bank wants to do would actually, because whether we like it or not, there are other factors, that will either support what's about to happen or, whether we decide to take decision or not. Well, let's not forget that, you have those who are the fiscal end who needs to come up with programs that will stimulate the economy. It's not just what the monetary policy people are, what they are doing from the central bank end. So, there has to be a confluence. There has to be where we have a robust, well-designed program to move the economy forward. And please, let's not forget, this is an electionary year. A lot of profit-taking is happening, so a lot of things will still affect the FX market, not just the decision of the central bank.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Obona Okuku, who is an economist, and as well as Mr. Mike and Dr. Emeka Okengo, as development economist. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, and also to Mr. Paul Alaje, a senior economist with SPM Professionals, who join us virtually from Lagos. And we hope to have this discussion another time, and of course time is not very much on our side this morning. And with that, we wrap up the show this morning. I am Abdulaziz. Abdulaziz, do stay with us and join us tomorrow at the same time for another edition of Daybreak on Trust TV.
And I'm Darshan Husseina Usman. Have yourselves a wonderful week.